Great, so good evening everybody. Hi there, my name's Surya Naga. Welcome to Dharma Night, especially welcome if it's your first time here at London Buddhist Centre. So what we'll do to start the evening is we'll salute the shrine. So. Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Dhammaya.
Namo Dhammaya.
Namo Sanghaya.
Namo Sanghaya.
Namo Namah.
Namo Namah.
Boom. Great, so sit comfortably for a few minutes. Well, I mean, you should always be sat comfortably, but you know what I mean, save your meditation knees. So I'll speak for a little while before we meditate. So we're starting today a new series on Dharma Night. So we often do these kind of series on Dharma Night where that kind of ties together the weeks as they go on. You can still kind of drop in and out at any point, but it's really useful to kind of have a series to create a bit of momentum, and also it means we can cover more stuff. So today we're starting a new series called On the Four Reflections. So I'm not going to say too much about that because Satyadasa is going to be kind of really opening up the first reflection particularly, but he'll introduce the whole series in the second half. But I think, what I am going to do is I'm going to read the text, the sort of short text when we meditate. And in a way that's the perfect time to sort of take in something like this, is when we're meditating. I think it's really important to kind of have things that give us motivation to meditate. Because, you know why, right? Because otherwise we either don't do it at all or we don't do it properly. We just kind of sit there and kind of like pretend to meditate, which probably has some value. Sitting there and pretending to meditate probably has some value. At least you're not kind of doing anything else that's worse than that. But if you're going to come to the London Buddhist Centre on a Monday evening, you might as well kind of like really put all of your energy into kind of really trying to build up some sort of depth of concentration. But the challenge still then comes, doesn't it? So in a moment I'll ring the bell for the mindfulness of breathing, and some of you probably will kind of think, oh no, now I have to do this bit, now I have to try and concentrate on my breath. So it's really, really good for us to kind of have a broader perspective when we're going into meditation, a broader perspective on kind of like the bigger questions of life that take us completely out of our kind of like day-to-day concerns. I think personally that's why meditation has to be kind of rooted in a Buddhist context, because if you're in a Buddhist context then you're going to be asking the kind of like biggest kind of like questions of life, and that's what these four reflections do. So I'll just say very briefly. So they start off with I'll read a kind of shortened version of it, but it's still got the same structure. They start off with a verse on what's called this precious opportunity. So really kind of reminding ourselves of the fact that actually, the odds are that we wouldn't be alive, especially kind of in the conditions that we kind of are in. The fact that we have so many kind of positive conditions that we often kind of take for granted are really kind of important. So it starts off with that, moves through to a kind of reflection on death. So starting to get to, in a way, underlining that first one, and really kind of opening up into how important it is that we start practicing now, today, in this moment. And then moving into kind of the practicalities of the sort of practical application of that, what that really means for day-to-day life. So reflecting on karma, the fact that our actions have consequences. So one really, really good example of that is that if you meditate, your mind will be in a kind of better state over time. And then moving into the defects of samsara. So the fact that this conditioned existence, this kind of unenlightened existence, is imperfect, and that there is a much bigger, bigger way to be. Actually, it's probably just a way that kind of comes to me of saying it. A broader perspective. So we're trying to get in touch with that broader perspective every time we meditate, and these verses are a really good way of trying to tap into that. So that's all I'll sort of say on that, because Satyadasa is going to go into that a lot more in the second half. So let's settle down to meditate now, and I'll read the verses at a certain point. So settling down into our meditation posture. We're here in the London Buddhist Centre, or at home watching on YouTube. Beginning to tune into a sense of our body. The weight of our body on the cushion or the chair. Sensations of our feet, our legs, grounding us. Even before we start the mindfulness of breathing proper, we can begin to become aware of the way the breath moves the body. gentle movements that create an energy. Looking for any tightness, holding on, or tension in the body. Just imagining that soften. Could be in your jaw or your shoulders or somewhere else. Creating a sense of openness and receptivity. This human birth is precious. An opportunity to awaken. But this body is impermanent. Ready or not, one day I shall die. So this life I must know as the tiny splash of a raindrop, a thing of beauty that disappears even as it comes into being. The karma I create shapes the course of my life. But however I act, life always has difficulties. No one can control it all. Only the Dharma can free me and others from suffering forever. Therefore I recall my heart's longing for freedom and resolve to make use of every day and night to realize it. The mindfulness of breathing. This human birth is precious. An opportunity to awaken. But this body is impermanent. Ready or not, one day I shall die. So this life I must know as the tiny splash of a raindrop, a thing of beauty that disappears even as it comes into being. The karma I create shapes the course of my life. But however I act, life always has difficulties. No one can control it all. Only the Dharma can free me and others from suffering forever. Therefore I recall my heart's longing for freedom and resolve to make use of every day and night to realize it. Good. So we'll have the tea break now, and then Satyadasa will be talking to us in the second half more about those verses, particularly the first one, and so we'll get to hear much more about what they mean. Those of us in the room in the London Buddhist Centre can head next door now for tea, and if you're online, you can stay where you are because Akash and Mitra will come and talk to you during the tea break.
I'm going to join you for the tea break, which I thought would be very nice. So if I'm looking at this, it's just so I can see what you're saying. And this is the first time I've done one of these kind of online tea breaks. So obviously I'm sort of used to doing online teaching, but I haven't done this before at Dharma Night. So this is a new experience for me, so bear with me. But I thought it'd be nice just to begin with, just to have a sense of kind of who's here. So if you want to say hello, that would be really nice. I'm sort of used to doing online teaching, but I haven't done this before. Oh dear. Instant tech fail. Oh dear. Oh dear. Okay, I'm just going to go and try and find Suryanaga so he can reset this phone. Sorry about this. Hello everyone, back. Goodness me. Okay, so yeah, I did say this was an experiment, didn't I? Who have we got? We've got Caroline is tuning in, that's lovely. Got Philippa from Glasgow. Got Kim. We've got Natasha, that's lovely. And we've got Sue from Hackney, great, okay. Got Alex. Alex says he was planning to be here in person, but he's full of cold. Oh, sorry to hear that, Alex. So he's sparing people his germs, which is very nice. And then Kim's put a little smiley face, so that's very lovely. Great. Nice to be with you all. And, Melanie's saying hello from South Texas. Incredible. That's very nice. And Britta, hi from Leighton. Hello, Britta. Just saying hello to you all really, because I guess we're sort of becoming aware that there is a sort of, there's a kind of an online Sangha, and then there's the people who are able to make it actually to the centre as well. And we just thought it'd be nice really, just to say hello to everybody, because obviously not everybody can get to the centre, or people like Melanie who are in South Texas, obviously it's not convenient to just pop across. So we thought rather than leaving you for 20 minutes or whatever, you can have a short break in a bit. Just nice to say hello to you really. So I thought I'd say a little bit about Claire's saying hello. That's lovely. She's in WC1. Hello, Claire. Nice to see you too as well. And here's Nina as well. No, Nina, the door is closed, it's a little bit noisy, so because there's a lot of people having a very loud cup of tea through there. So what I thought I'd do is I'll say a little bit about some things that are going on around the centre, for those of you that are able to join in with those, because I don't know how many of you are tuning in because you want to tune in online, or how many of you can actually make it to the centre. So for those of you that are able to, I'm going to say a little bit about a couple of retreats that are coming up. I just thought it'd be interesting as well, like a question from my perspective is, I'm interested in how many of you have been on retreat. And yeah, maybe you could just say that while I say a little bit about these retreats that are coming up. It's also just important to say as well that if you aren't in the UK, or you can't make it to the centre, or you can't come on any of the retreats that we're running, or you don't want to be on retreat at that time of year, we will be running some activities online as well. I'm not sure if we're doing a full online winter retreat this year, but we'll definitely be doing some activities online, and I think we might be streaming the talks from the retreats that we're doing as well. So that'll be a really, really nice activity for you to do, and I guess you could follow that even if you're having a sort of traditional Christmas and you're not going to be on retreat as well. Alex says he went on his first retreat over the August bank holiday weekend, and he's booked on the 10-day winter retreat and can't wait. That's excellent, Alex, lovely. Nina says she's been on one and she's booked on a weekend retreat in November. Caroline saying she's just back from retreat. Melanie saying sadly never, neither here nor in England, but she's certainly coming to an online version. And Philippa says she's just back from a retreat on this precious opportunity. So that's very auspicious, isn't it? That's the talk for this evening. Nina says she feels like she needs a retreat every 3 months. But it's interesting you say that, Nina. I mean, I do tend to go on retreat every few months. I probably do like 3 or 4 longer retreats a year, and then maybe like 2 or 3 weekends as well. And I think it's just very, very good to go on retreat regularly. Claire says she's been on many retreats over the last 11 years. She's lost count, many at the old Vajrasana. Yeah, so Vajrasana is the London Buddhist Centre's retreat centre. Before, it's all been rebuilt now. It's a very sort of beautiful, modern, extremely aesthetically pleasing building. Murray says his last retreat was the men's intensive last year. Sue saying, thoughtful of you to be with us. Yeah, it's a pleasure. She's not been on retreat, but she's managing to book one. Crystal says she's in New Jersey, but she did the winter retreat online last year and she loved it. Great, okay. So yeah, we've got 2 retreats that we're running over the winter period this year. So we've got the winter retreat, which is 22nd of December to 1st of January. And you can do 5 or 10 days of that retreat. So it's the 22nd of December to the 1st of January. You can either do the first 5 days, or I think the second 5 days, or the whole 10 days. And that's at Adhisthana, which is in Herefordshire. It's a really, really lovely retreat centre in Herefordshire. And this particular retreat's a real sort of highlight of our calendar. And that's suitable for people that are quite new. So if you're fairly new to going on retreat, it's a really good experience. And you'll be getting the sort of thing that you get at the centre here, which is like, teaching. I think there'll probably be yoga. There'll be probably a bit of led study. You can meet together in groups, that kind of thing. And there's lots of time and space just to rest and to go for walks and that sort of thing as well. And yeah, I remember going on that retreat when I first came along. So I got involved in the first time I started going to Buddhist Centre was in the late 90s, but I got involved here in like 2007 or 2008, I think, and that year I went on that retreat, and it was lovely because I just met so many lovely people and really enjoyed it. And then when I came to the centre, I felt like I was sort of in the swing and knew a lot of people. And then there's our winter intensive retreat, which is the same dates, 22nd of December to 1st of January. That's at Vajrasana, which is the retreat centre that Claire was talking about. Absolutely beautiful building. That's led by Paramabandhu and Kusalasara. That's for you if you're a little bit more experienced. So if you've been coming along to the Buddhist Centre for like 6 months or something like that. And I'll be on that retreat as well. I'm going to be on the team for that retreat. I'm not leading it, but I'll be on the team. So yeah, come along to that if you're a little bit more experienced, like if you've been coming along for 6 months or more. And that would be very, very nice as well. Yeah, great. So have a think about those retreats. I think it's a very, very good thing to do at that time of year. It's kind of an alternative really to the usual sort of Christmas stuff of, I don't know, parties and eating a lot. And my experience of being on retreat at that time of year, which I usually am, is that you start the year feeling kind of refreshed and energized rather than feeling a bit kind of exhausted and like you need a break. So yeah, think about that. Let's see who's saying what. Yeah. Why is retreat important? That's a really good question, Melanie. So I think what a retreat provides you with is like ideal conditions to put the teachings into practice. So it's like ideal conditions for meditation, ideal conditions to reflect on what we teach here, and ideal conditions to just relax and be more mindful, basically. So you can do that in your everyday life. You know, you can be mindful going to work, you can be mindful when you're with your family, doing your day-to-day stuff. But it's very, very good to just put yourself in perfect conditions every so often. And part of those conditions is that you're away from having to have that thinking mind as well. So you're not having to think about your work, you're not having to plan, you're not having to take care of other people, and you're also switched off from kind of technology and the internet and your phone, and that makes a massive difference. And you're in very, very beautiful surroundings as well. So in a nutshell, that's sort of on one level what a retreat is, but on another level it doesn't really do it justice. I think you have to kind of experience a retreat, even an online retreat, to actually know what that's like. But it's, putting yourself in very, very good conditions, basically. So Claire's helping with that question as well. She's saying it deepens your commitment and deepens your connection to the Dharma. Lovely. So you can all continue to answer that question as well. Nice to see you, Shobit, as well. Welcome. Lovely to see you. Great. Okay. And then also there's the urban retreat, which is the 23rd to the 30th of October. So that's in person, and you can sign up for free online. I imagine the activities for the urban retreat will be streamed as well. And that's where you take a week of your usual life, and we'll support you with a week of free activities at the LBC to deepen mindfulness in your sort of everyday context, basically. So that's the 23rd to the 30th of October. Okay. And then I'll give you a few minutes break in a moment. And you can take a few minutes just to pop to the loo or get yourself a cup of tea or whatever before the second half starts. But before I do that, I'd just like to make an appeal to your generosity. So, as I've said, we're very conscious that we do have this online Sangha, as well as running all the other activities at the centre. So all of that does take resources to take care of, and to, what we're trying to do here is provide conditions for people to grow. We've got this building, we've got the activities that we run online, and none of us are paid to do this. I just give of my time freely because I've benefited from coming to the centre, and I really want to help other people to benefit from coming to the centre. And that's true of everybody that's here. So even the people that work here just get supported with basic expenses, not a salary. But it does cost a lot of money to run this place. So if you're able to give, we'd really, really appreciate that. You could give, say £10 at the end of this class. But even better than that would be if you could set up a monthly direct debit. That would be fantastic. And Mircea will post the link to that so that you will be able to do that. We'd really appreciate it if you can give. And giving and generosity is very, very beneficial for you as well. When we practice generosity, it actually brings benefits to us as well. I'm also presenting you with an opportunity. Okay. So I'm going to leave you to have a break for a few minutes, and then I'll come back and we'll have a second half with Satyadasa, and I'm going to pop through and just speak to the people having the in-person tea break now for a few minutes. So thanks very much, everyone. Lovely to see you, and take care of yourself. I think it's still on.
can see the top bit of me. I've gone out of it. Good. So yes, as Surya Naga was saying, we're going to be starting a new topic, a new session, last 4 sessions, and then we go on to another topic. I was thinking that it's the welcome back after that, but it's not, is it? Okay, good. So yeah, we're going to be looking at what are called the 4 mind turnings. You could call them the 4 reflections or the 4 reminders. Sometimes they're just called the 4 thoughts, and that's short for the 4 thoughts that turn the mind. Where do they come from? So I'll just say a bit about where they come from, and then we'll look at the first one, and hopefully this will be a bit participatory, and you can tell me what you think about the first one. So that would be good. Where are they from? So they're actually the first. These are reflections that appear across the Buddhist tradition, and we'll go through them. Right from early Buddhism all the way through to right now, they've been things that have been reflected on. They're very traditional Buddhist reflections. And so I'm going to put my glasses back on so I can see properly. But they're formalized, particularly I think by the Tibetans, who really use them as what they call sort of preliminaries to practice. But they're not really preliminaries, they can be profound reflections. So they famously came from somebody called Gampopa, who was teaching very early, a long time ago, 9th century. I made that up. Might be some of the time, but hopefully no one actually knows. So that's that. They're said to be, so you know when you practice meditation, we get momentarily distracted, and we sort of sometimes think, oh, my mind is so distracted, that's why I come to practice. You recognise that, and everybody recognises that. It's not really a profound realisation in a way, although it's the beginning of a realisation. But the mind turnings are more suggesting that our whole lives are somewhat like that, in general. I don't mean like we're distracted from our minds all the time, but our whole life is a sort of distracted from what it could be. Our minds are generally not attending to what's of real importance. So these are reflections that help us do that. I was thinking about, focus and things and distraction. In a way, when we're meditating, we're not. It's not really that we're sort of not focused. It's that we're not really interested in the breath. Probably, if we were really interested in it, we wouldn't have a problem focusing. Probably one perspective at least is that we don't really have much trouble focusing. We think we do, but we have trouble being interested in things. We have trouble finding meaning in things. We have all kinds of things that arise that result in us being somewhat distracted. But if you're into football, you're unlikely to sort of report that you just couldn't focus. Totally drifted during the segment. It doesn't work like that. If you're interested, you get focused. So these are to interest us in the Dharma, so they're about turning us towards not only sort of these reflections on the one hand have their own sort of meaning, but they're to turn us towards the Dharma. So they have a kind of a positive goal of getting us interested in that. I'll go through them briefly. The first one is the precious human birth. I like saying that. It's a precious human birth because it's an opportunity to practice. The second one is impermanence, which, as Surya Naga said, is impermanence and death. That reminder to get on with it. The third is karma, and the karma means that we can influence the mind. We can influence our lives for better or worse. And the fourth one is that anywhere we can't really find an adequate resting point in this life. We think that we can. We think that we can, we'll get it sorted out eventually, and then it'll be pretty good. And we don't really think that, but that's implicit in a lot of the way we go about our lives, that we will reach a final sort of resting point. And it also points, this fourth one, to the fact that there's suffering on a very basic sort of level, that there's suffering. But there's a suffering that comes from not really finding any fulfillment within this life, actually. Within this life is a too vague a way of putting it, but the other way of putting it is within conditioned existence, which sounds to something else. But anyway, that's somebody else's job to do that one, not mine. So I'll go through these sort of, in a way they're kind of natural facts, some of them, impermanence and death, anybody would recognise that. Probably you could get most people to recognise that actions have consequences in some ways. A lot of people would assent to that. Whether people would assent to life being a precious opportunity is maybe more questionable, but all of these are not just kind of facts so much as they're what the mind turns to in order to practice the Dharma. So they do actually imply a kind of a sense of an assent to the whole flow of Dharma practice. But they are quite observable facts anyway, some of them. But they do, you're putting yourself with these facts, you're planting yourself into a Buddhist context, and when we say a Buddhist context, we don't sort of mean a religious context. It means you're placing yourself into a perspective or a view of that's helpful, that really augments and in a way, if you did just turn your mind to these things, you'd already be very much in the zone of practice. They're not really just sort of thoughts that you have and then you get on with your practice. Actually, personally, I find it more helpful to my overall, say, concentration, if I want to do a mindfulness of breathing, is to bring in a Dharma reflection. And that might not be that I sit there and think about the Dharma, but it might be, I'm not particularly great at this on my own, but so when I come to the centre and we bow to the shrine, actually it's just a mind, that's a mind turning in a way as well. Everything that you do in a Buddhist context would be a turning to something of greater value, something that you maybe know is of deeper import that you can't put into words. And that becomes, I think, the more one meditates, the more one, if one chooses to live the Dharma life, or one is drawn to understanding that becomes more and more important, that you have these things that remind us of the bigger picture. So I'll just take us through the traditional reflections on these, because Gampopa lists out, I won't go through them all, but he lists out lots of inner and outer conditions and for what it means for life to be a precious opportunity. You'll notice it's two things. It's the human birth is precious, and it's an opportunity to awaken. So therefore, this precious human birth is precious because it's an opportunity to awaken. And there's lots of different versions of this, and I won't go through them all, but there's one by an order member called Vishvapani that you could find on Free Buddhist Audio if you're interested in, and you put in the 4 reminders, and it really goes, it sort of sets it out quite thoroughly what these are about. But traditionally, so let's think. I have health and energy, says this translation. So I have health and I have energy. I have the ability to think and feel freely. I have enough food and money to meet my needs. These are pragmatic points. It doesn't mean that you have to have perfect health and energy. You have to have perfect circumstances before you can turn your mind to the Dharma. That it doesn't mean at all. But it is surely incontrovertible that if you don't have those things, you're going to find it harder to practice. Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, I had an episode of something called Trigeminal Neuralgia, which I'd never had before, and it's just the most shocking pain down this trigeminal nerve. And I did get quite disoriented for about a day because the pain was such that I just wanted it to go away. I was just sort of hanging on there, hoping it was going to stop. And that came out of the blue, and that's what happens, that with often, with illness, even if it's quite predictable, and it's still there actually, this thing, but obviously I've got drugs now, which are surely good. And I did rally myself after a while. I did start to practice Qigong. I couldn't do meditation, but I could stand and feel the energy before it got too overwhelming. So I did try to practice with my mind, but I thought, I don't want to have to do this for the rest of the week or the rest of the month, or because it goes on and on. So there was that worry. But so, this is an incontrovertible, not a controversial point. But we have health and energy, as Surya Naga said. We just take that for granted, don't we? We don't think about it until it's gone, or till it's sort of threatening to go. These things. I live in a country that's free from war and many of the other difficulties people can face. So this is again Vishwapani, and that's a similar point, that conditions are important, and we shouldn't think that, and we can reflect on the simple fact of having good conditions that don't always last, and ultimately don't last at all. But the traditional reflections also go on to talk about the inner states that arise. So when we say a precious human birth, what do we really mean by a human birth? It's not just a precious human body. There is that lovely version of this which says, the human body at peace with itself is more precious than the rarest gem. Cherish your body, it's yours this one time only. A thing of beauty that is, and there's the lovely sense of the human body. So that is a way of talking about it. But traditionally it's the human birth, which is slightly different to the body, because when we say body, we could just mean, it's good having this body, it's good. But human birth suggests the human birth. What is that human birth? Now, traditionally in Tibetan Buddhism, this is talking about, they talk about the realms, and this comes from these verses sort of. Actually, these verses that we're reading were written by an order member, but they're very influenced by the Tibetan tradition. So it says that this birth is precious and rare because not only have we been born, and not only do we have these outer conditions that are fleeting and in the scheme of things, we're quite lucky or fortunate to have all this health and energy when we have it. But then there's our mind. Our mind is a condition. So they talk about the realms. They talk first about the hell realms. So we're not in the hell realm. So the traditional reflection would be, not only are we in the human body, but we're not caught up in a hellish state of mind. And I think the key thing about a hellish state of mind is the perception that you can't get out of it. It's the perception that it goes on forever. Whether it does go on forever, of course, is another thing, because no state, according to certainly Buddhism, goes on forever. But there can definitely be a sense that you have no place to stand. I think that's what when I was in this pain, I think I don't have a place to stand, to have a perspective on this. And this can be in all sorts of states of mind that we get into. Hell is the suffering and the torment is also likened to a kind of paranoia, a kind of sense that you're continually under threat of somebody attacking you, so that you interpret the world in terms of a threat, and that gives rise to hate. So mental state that's correlate with the idea of hell is hatred and ill will, and paranoia is the kind of basis of that. And that can, of course, if you're like that, and we probably all get into states where we feel threatened, you can actually give rise to real enemies in the world because that's your state of mind. So it might not be just fictional in the end, it becomes something that is actually manifesting. And that's hell. So of course, in traditional accounts, you might think in terms of an actual hell realm, but a realm somewhere else. But you don't need to think of that with these reflections. You're not in hell. Yeah. And the other hell realm is called the hungry ghost realm, and this isn't a realm that's characterized by great torment, but it's the pain of unsatisfied desire. So it's the pain of just that sort of out of control feeling of going around wanting things that you can't even assess whether this is doing you any good. You're just stuck in it. You're just continually. You might get some thrills from certain things that we do. Of course, classically, this is addiction, but it's addiction in the widest sense of that, because that goes right across. So it's really based on the need to possess things or have experiences in order to shore up a sense of insecurity. The basic idea is that if we have a very strong sense of self, we are very insecure. If our sense of self is very dug in, we have to defend it in some way, and you could defend it by hatred, by really clearly defining your enemy and polarizing in that way, or you can define it by the need to accumulate things to yourself and possess things. But the characteristic of that realm, which is called the hungry ghost, is that it's just incessant. Again, you've got no time. It's not that you haven't got any time. You haven't got any ability to conceive of life in any other way than your immediate experience, which is not good, and which you need to solve by the next thing that you acquire or consume. Those are the hell realms. There's one more realm which is called a Titan realm, or the kind of realm of the jealous gods, and that's a realm where you are consumed by envy. It's the success of others that really bothers you. It makes you feel less than, and so you must have it all. Do you recognise that? I can recognise feeling belittled by the success of others. I can recognise that. But if that's really strong, these are they're called titans because they're kind of powerful figures that they're jealous of the gods, or they're envious, whatever the word. What they envy is the gods and what the gods have got. The gods in the god realm in the Tibetans, they've got what they got through karmic action, through positive action. So this could be, our state of mind that we've really cultivated something within our lives. We've cultivated generosity. We've cultivated a sense of gratitude or awareness of others, or sensitivity or something, and we've that's won through action of body, speech and mind. But the jealous gods, they want to grab that fruit, they want to get that, but they don't want to, because they can't stand the fact that somebody else has got it. So they're driven by envy. The other realm is the animal realm, which is it's not quite the animal realm. Of course, if you're taking this literally, it would be the animal realm. And the animal realm is characterized by an absence of an absence of any drive towards anything other than the satisfaction of sense pleasures, which do very nicely in that realm. It's like your dog. You feed it, you walk it, and then it just lies down and sleeps. And you think, God, I wish I could be like my dog. It doesn't have any other particular urges like that. It doesn't have a spiritual problem. and this is said to be possible with people as well. You could be that you're. It doesn't mean that you're. If you apply this to a person, it doesn't mean that they're animalistic in the sense that they have very low pleasures. It's not a judgment like that. It's more saying that the matter of like the satisfaction that they have in life, it doesn't engender any further questions about life. Could go into that, but let's leave the animals alone. So human realm, it has a balance of all of these. This is a traditional idea. So if we were thinking about it, we would say that we're not afflicted by those states to that degree. We're not completely caught up in any of those kind of realms. We can probably relate to and understand all of those realms. The human realm shares in all the other realms. It has some element of all of them, but it can, and that allows a human being to empathise right across the board with all kinds of states of mind, because there's a dose of suffering in human life, and it's enough. The God realm is maybe slightly different. I'm not going to go into the gods anyway. What do I know about the God realm? But the human realm has an amount of suffering, and there's also something else. So what else is there in the human realm to make this a precious opportunity? I suppose I should say it for, should be obvious in a way, but life is an opportunity to do all sorts of things, and those things can be precious as well. And we are talking here about a precious opportunity to practice the Dharma. So the outer conditions that are listed are mainly to do with having the good fortune to meet the Dharma in this life. You could have all those things. You could have this human birth. But the traditional perspective is that if the Buddha hadn't taught the Dharma, it hadn't opened up the way, then you would be unlikely to find it yourself. It's been practiced down through the generations. It's come to this country. In the case of us, it's come to the UK. Buddhism has been practiced in the UK probably at least a century now, more seriously for half a century, and it's been worked into a form which is more appealing and appropriate sometimes for us. So this is it. So there's a meeting of inner conditions and outer conditions which make this life a precious opportunity to practice the Dharma. So I wanted to ask you a question just to get a bit more feedback. So the question is, do you feel this life to be a precious opportunity, a precious human birth? And if not, why not? If yes, why yes? Brian?
From my experience, suffering brings me here, and that's what we hear for quite a while, but then all of a sudden something much bigger, like you can see the opportunities, and so it's becomes less about suffering. So I think a lot of people don't see that opportunity because they're just too busy in their own mush, aren't they? And then you need to have your head up above the sea to kind of see that actually there's something else available. So I think, I think it is an opportunity. But partly also, I feel like meditation helps me. I want to live a better life, and meditation helps me through that. So both.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. Yeah. Yeah, as you mentioned getting your head up above it. I mean, when I was preparing this, I had to be honest. it brought on a slight feeling of unease in me, this topic, because I've been dealing with decorating a flat, I've been dealing with all the things that, I've been rushed off my feet with various things and worrying about various things, and then I have to give a talk about life as a precious opportunity. And I have to admit that, a lot of the time, I certainly don't have my head above that and into that space. But yeah. Anyone else want to reflect on that? Yes.
I think I've gone through phases with that. I certainly identify with the hungry ghost and the jealousy or envy thing. But I think all the while I've had in the background the belief that life is a precious opportunity since I was young, and that there's something more to life. And so I think, it's almost like a background thing that's now becoming more of a foreground, with my practice being more of a regular thing. So that feel a bit more expansive at the moment, but I think that can also just continually change.
I think that's interesting that, like, deep down, like, from the beginning, I think I certainly have the sense that life is this precious human birth. That phrase really, really resonates with me for some reason. And it's a deep down thing. It is a deep down thing that is often a bit occluded, I think. Any comments online?
Yes. Jamie says yes, but it's hard. Claire says yes, it's a very fleeting opportunity. If you have children, it seems even more precious as they grow up and leave the nest. And Nina says sometimes she feels like it's not an opportunity, especially when the going gets tough. Sometimes she feels, and sometimes she feels like it is an opportunity, and she practices consistently.
Thank you. Merch is reading out some things online there. I don't know whether you can hear that. But thank you for the comments online. I mean, the thing about, the amazing thing is that we keep ourselves in such small circles. So, I mean, I had an example of this, which is not me, I say. When I first moved to this area, we were going around looking for a flat to buy, and there was an estate agent who took us to this flat, and he said, like, I warn you, this guy's had the flat on the market for quite a long time. And we went in there and we had a cup of tea with this man, and it transpired that this man had his flat on the market for years, literally years, and he just liked to have people come into his flat and then make him an offer. And it was kind of he couldn't believe that there were these people coming in making him such a huge offer on his flat. It went on for years apparently, and this estate agent confessed that it was just a sort of a thing to get us through the door, and now he could show us another flat. But we circle around very small concerns, don't we? We have this body which is absolutely extraordinary in itself. We have this life, and we have this deep down knowledge that life is precious, yet our minds often are moving in very, very small circles compared to what they could be moving in. We get a glimpse of something, don't we, in various circumstances. Somebody online mentioned having children, and of course when you actually, literally a human birth is a miraculous event. It's undeniably precious. That language of it being precious is spot on, isn't it, when it comes to a birth of a child. It's miraculous. It momentarily lifts one or completely out of the kind of ordinary. When you see a birth, when there's a birth takes place, and maybe this happens a lot as you as children, as you watch your children grow up, you can be just amazed that this is the case. Somehow it's easier to see maybe with children than with your spouse or your partner or whatever. But get that with sometimes it's just when we're born, we're not thinking about how that happened. In terms of we know the story about sort of how birth happens as a sort of physical process. In fact, even more generally, just to say this, we know an enormous amount now about, or we have a picture of evolution, don't we? Scientific evolution, material evolution that's happening. Because the problem with the account of evolution, as marvellous and mind-blowing as it is, that long, long story of the generation of stars and minerals and material, and eventually the creation of suns and galaxies and planets and life. That story, which is an incredible story actually, and we're only at the very beginning of being in the era where that story is there, but it is rather it is a materialistic story. It doesn't actually account for consciousness within that. But when you see a child, when a child is born, there is a sense of the wonder of creation, and that wonder of creation is not quite accounted for in the picture of the story of evolution that we have. So one of the tasks that many people have is many people are doing now is to sort of retell that story of creation and evolution in a way that also brings in the kind of inner dimension of the mind. So we can get a glimpse of that with different things. We get a glimpse, perhaps, of the precious opportunity in a Buddhist context, maybe when you go on a retreat. I'm sure if you've been on retreat, you will know that the smaller circles that we inhabit, the limited ideas that we have, tend to just dissolve over the course of. You just practice a bit, and they go away, or they don't haunt us so much, and our circle just becomes that much wider. Maybe we naturally start to talk to people a bit more, smile a bit more, be a bit more, a bit less preoccupied with a story about ourselves or an idea we've sat in meditation for hours, maybe, watching our minds, and eventually we just let go of that thought, and or we see through something, and that opens up a bigger sense of ourselves. So there's that. The next question is, what qualities would this bring if we had this awareness more? What qualities would it bring? Mindfulness?
Yeah.
So if you realise the preciousness, you'd be mindful. Great, thank you. Ruby? Anyone else? Yeah.
It would give you a lot more focus to not waste any time, get on with the things that really matter.
Yes. Focus.
It would help relationships.
Yes.
Difficult family relationships, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would definitely give clarity.
Mm-hmm. So clarity and a sense of what's most important to do, to mend relationships possibly, or
It sort of also could relieve you of some pressure to be something more than what you really kind of are.
It's interesting. So that was sorry, I don't know your name, but Joe saying the reflection on the precious human birth could relieve you of a certain pressure to be something more than you are. I like that. I think that certainly speaks to me. I remember my preceptor once, who's the person who ordained me, who gave me my name and gave me this thing here, Ratnagosha. He was the former chair. We'd go on many walks around the park where I would be telling him all my woes, all my doubts, all my little things that were going on, and that were very, very at the forefront of my mind. He listened with great patience. And he did say to me at once, you're okay exactly as you are. You're an unfolding. You're unfolding in the way that is meant to be. This is fine. You know, he managed to just get that sense of when we talk about a precious human birth, there is something magical about it. There's something that is. I'm not going to pursue that thought. Once I use the word magical, I realise I'm finished. Okay. Thank you for that, Joe. Yeah.
I was thinking kindness as well.
Kindness.
Yeah, like it made me think of when I've had that sense of perspective. Sometimes it's been like when people have died. If I've had someone close to me who's died,
Mm-hmm.
it seems to have just brought that perspective with it,
Mm.
and then it's much easier to be kind because it just sort of makes you think, oh well, actually, it just gives you that sense of perspective.
Yes.
Like you were saying about not trying, or Joe was saying about not trying to be something more than you are. You just realise what's important, and it feels like quite naturally what feels important
Yes.
is to just be
Yes.
kind to people.
Yeah, and of course we could say precious human birth. You could say precious human death as well. You know, death is definitely considered to be a precious opportunity, particularly in Tibetan Buddhist practice, but all across the board. And it brings a similar sort of heightened sensitivity to this life in its reality. The reality is that we are born and we die, and that is the pithiest sort of statement of fact. I was thinking about bodies. You know, bodies, you could say, are born and die without our say-so, don't they? I mean, we have this very clear sense that our body, this is my body. And of course, on one level, that's certainly true, and you know, that works. That statement. This is my body. But we're born, and everything that we ever think about ourselves, about other people, every belief or opinion we ever espouse, everything we love, everything we hate, everything that. None of that changes the fact that the body is born and goes through its processes and dies. And yet I think this body is mine. I'm very committed to that idea that this body is mine. Yeah, but what does that mean? What does that mean in light of the fact that the body is a natural process? Of course, I can influence my body in various ways as it goes. But this, of course, is the reflection on not self. You know, this is the Buddhist reflection on Mercha. Did you? No, sorry. Yeah, this is the reflection on that we do not own our bodies. I studied law, and that used to be one of the things that came up sometimes. Do I own my body in a legal sense? And the answer was generally no, because if you own a body, it's slavery, you know, and you don't own your body because you can't sell it. And it doesn't mean anything to say that you own your body in a legal sense. It got a bit tricky if a bit of your body was taken away and then they produce a cell line from it, and that gets more difficult. But if you cut off if your foot was cut off in a surgery, they wouldn't give it to you in a bag if you asked for it. It's not yours. In one sense, but it isn't, is it? You wouldn't say, that's my toe. I want that. You know, it's not really yours. So, because in Buddhism you hold those two perspectives on the body. That's very much my body and it's my foot. We know what this means, but it is also a reflection. I mean, the body is extraordinary. We know there's some wonderful things that we can learn from science about the body. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just thinking when you were saying about the body not being yours, also about, I was reading something about gut health and about the numbers of bacteria that's inside the gut. It's like there's more bacteria inside you than there is actual what might be like your cells
Yes.
that's inside there.
Thank
So
you.
maybe in your whole body you actually have more bacteria than you have, which are kind of separate entities than
Yeah.
your actual self.
Thank you very much. I'll repeat that because that was my next point. Actually, I mean, yeah. I mean that is a point. It was there was a great display at one of those places on the Euston Road. Can't remember what it's called, but it basically came one of those Wellcome Trust saying that there are hundreds of trillions of bacteria, fungi, molds, various other minute things in the body that are not human. That they did not originate with humans. They haven't followed the genetic evolution of the human cells, and they outnumber by 10 to 1 the human cells in the body. I think they're actually not bigger in terms of weight. So in terms of weight, it would just be from your knee to your toe. That would be about what isn't you. They're very small. But that's a reflection. I don't know whether these reflections help. Sometimes I don't think the reflections on, we're all sort of quarks or whatever. There's always somebody who says that. And I don't know. But if you really soak yourself in reflective practice, the wonder of what is the body can open up. The wonder of it and the mysteriousness of the body. There are fields around the body. We do know this. There are definitely electromagnetic fields around cells and around the whole body. And the heart has the biggest magnetic field. It's measurable at quite a distance. And there are, in fact, bacteria apparently even in the fields of the body. I don't know how that works. Cells of the body are emitting light, photons. That's called biophotons. They talk now about the brain having, there being a brain up here, the brain, we call the brain, and a heart brain and a gut brain. And they're made of the same basic material, the same neuronal structures in each case. And I think your gut brain is about the size of a small bird brain if you packed it all together. It's a wondrous thing, the body. I mean, it is beyond imagination. So there's all of that. Then there's the body as a natural sort of object. Also the body from a Buddhist sort of perspective, when you start to meditate, you realise that the body is not just a thing. I think from it's not just a thing. It's actually, technically, it's you just have perceptions of the body. We're getting really into it. We just realise that you just have feelings that arise that we call body. You don't really experience the whole body at any moment, but the idea of the body is just an idea. And then we have all of the perceptions of the body, the feelings of the body. But you probably, if you've meditated, you will have recognised that we have a subtler way of interacting with the body. We have a subtler feeling of the body that can be there quite easily. Everybody probably has this, and it can go quite deep. So in the tradition, there's a subtle body and there's a very subtle body. And by the time you reach the very subtle levels of the body, so in the breath, for example, if you realise the breath is not just an anatomical thing in your lungs, the breath can actually be pervading through the body, and you can feel that. You can feel that as energy. You can feel that through your whole body if you're subtle and you've got into the practice. And apparently, this hasn't happened to me, but many people report that the breath appears to just disappear altogether. Whether it probably doesn't, but it just appears to completely vanish. And the whole feelings of the body, the cruder feelings of the body, like you can probably feel now, sitting here, aching in various ways, they've all completely gone in certain states of meditation. And that's what leads to the fact that you can observe that the way that you understand your body is based, of course, on perceptions of your body, and those perceptions can change. So, and the body houses consciousness. The body, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. I don't know. I couldn't possibly begin to delve into the relationships between the body and the mind. How does that work? It's a miraculous thing. for me, over the years, at my best, I think I've felt that we are. I'm going to say it. I'm going to be brave. We are spiritual beings. We're not best described as bodies. We're better. I mean, the word spiritual is not a great word, and I really don't like it, but I can't think of another one. We are precious in that sense that we are all spiritual beings. I'm going to leave it at that because I'll get in a muddle if I say too much. Any more qualities of mind that come up with this? Any online?
Yes, people are saying energy, love and kindness,
Mm-hmm. Energy, love and kindness,
gratitude, compassion,
gratitude.
a sense of urgency.
Yes. I'm going to pick up on gratitude. I really felt that when I was thinking about it, that this is about gratitude. This human birth is precious, an opportunity to awaken. That must be there. And gladness. Don't know about you, but this. It's difficult to say this because to make a generalization, because I'm only going on my own experience, which I realise is literally just my own experience. But I find the world increasingly confusing and increasingly difficult to. My mind wants to sort of encompass it and understand it, but it can't. It just really can't now. And I don't think that's just because I'm middle-aged now and I don't know what the hell's going on because of that, which is a phenomenon, where you realise that your certainties that you sort of took for granted don't really apply in the way that you had hoped. But I've started to notice that this has been a case for a long time, of course, decades, I don't know, centuries, but our culture increasingly really is very thin in terms of what it offers in terms of meaning. It's fairly straightforward. It's still, the language is all there, the kind of ideas are all there, and I grew up at a good school. I went to, I was a happy childhood in a way, very lucky, fortunate to go to a good school, and I was taught the things that we're taught at school, and I picked up the ideas that what you do in life is, a good career and marriage and this kind of thing. Nothing wrong with that. Of course, intellectual achievement was very prized in my education, and your potential is stressed quite heavily. And then in society, of course, there's a lot of talk about progressing, and that's real and that's important, and it's not to be denigrated. The idea of betterment, self-betterment through the various ways. Of course, that's a huge topic. How that is not happening for very many people, and very many people are stuck in miserable circumstances. But just to navigate, just to talk about the sort of meaning element of it, I certainly find sometimes my head, to use Brian's expression, is below the parapet or something, and I'm struggling. I find myself struggling to really feel glad and grateful, to really feel like this really is an opportunity, and to me, the reflection, I do know some people who embrace the whole thing, embraced all the contradictions and difficulties of their lives, and live with gladness, like that this is happening. And it's easier to say, of course, if you're in certain material circumstances, we can point to the disparities between people in terms of how easy it is to feel glad and feel grateful, and that is true. But nonetheless, it's still possible to be glad and grateful, and that is a high bar, I think, to live with that. And there are times when I feel I can embrace all of this, and I feel this is the best time to be alive. I'm very glad to be me with all my, breaking out of my little limited circles that I inhabit. Incredibly grateful for the opportunity that I didn't really go seeking for when I first came to this centre. I just sort of came upon it, didn't even know that I wanted it, but I stuck with it because I did, and this it just seems incredible. It just seems incredible to me that has happened, and if I'm really honouring that, I feel gratitude, and I feel grateful. I feel glad, and those to me are about as happy as I can get. If I feel grateful, I feel connected. If I feel glad, it's an emotion that doesn't need any justification. It doesn't have any downside. But it's hard. I just wanted to say that. I don't know what everyone else's experiences is of that. But it's a bit bitty, this talk, isn't it? I'm sort of ranging across a bunch of things. How does this turning make you feel? And then we'll wind up in a few minutes, but any more reflections on how this makes you feel? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I really agree that it often gives me a feeling of kindness or compassion. I think when I realise that my own life is precious or that I'm unfolding, you automatically have to realise that everyone else's life, everyone else is just unfolding, and everyone else is equally precious and equally or equally their bodies are going to live and die without them saying anything about it. So I'm automatically given a response of compassion.
Yeah, thank you for that.
That's a feeling.
Yeah, it can build a sense of empathy to realise that everybody's life is unfolding. Is what you're saying, and this is brings compassion and empathy. Yeah, at the back.
Respect to life, to your own life, and to life to other people's lives. You respect more if you realize these things.
Yeah. So talking about respecting other people's lives and respecting your own life. Yeah. Any online? No. I mean, does it bring any more troublesome feelings? I'm fishing now. Does it bring any more troublesome feelings? Yeah.
I have one that I'll share. It was actually something that came up for me when the lady in front of you mentioned something, and I agreed with most of what you were saying because I think it's really wonderful. But I found that in my experience, when I'm it was going back to the point you made about it bringing benefit to relationships, and also I can't remember what you said now. Sorry.
It was more about clarity. Being sort of
having priorities over what's really meaningful in life. And I found that actually, for me, when I thought about it, I thought actually that's actually produced some difficulty for me in some relationships, because if people see you actually sort of not taking things seriously, like worldly things, and someone else is very caught up in that thing, they can actually really take exception to you for that sometimes. But I think the kindness element really predominates as well.
That's a good point, yeah. So the more seriously we take these turnings, this is just sort of paraphrasing what you say, the more seriously you do attend to some of the things that are really important. Sometimes that might lead into difficulty because somebody else might have other priorities that are not that.
And maybe it's just because I was sort of my head in the clouds and I wasn't keeping my feet on the ground with it. So but I that's definitely an experience I've had.
Yeah. I mean, yes. And
I think there's something that you said. You said you came here and you weren't really looking for it. But then you had a choice. So there
was something about agency. It was something about you embracing that. And I think opportunities present themselves, but then we choose. There's something about agency to go with.
Yeah, that's interesting. So that was about agency, and the idea of the opportunity comes along, but we have to choose that opportunity. We have to sort of take that opportunity. That is in a sense what we're sort of urging ourselves to do, and I think these things have a kind of a resonance. That can have a resonance. Dharma practice in general can have a resonance which isn't quite in your control. It's not quite that you choose in the sense of now I'm going to do this. You are, if you're really taken by it, you just go out of a kind of something that is not fully within your. You can't quite see it. It's not like you know it. You don't know what Dharma is. You don't know everything. Or you think you do. I certainly thought I did when I was in 21 or whatever. Yeah. I mean, just to finish really, I mean, these things can bring sadness. I mean, that the reflection on the precious opportunity, of course, sometimes for me, it makes me feel, gosh, yeah, that's true. I wish I did more of that. I don't see, there's so much that is not like that, you know. So these reflections could bring up all kinds of, it's not like they immediately lead one into a sort of sense of the greatness and the gladness of things. As reflections, we'll end with a little bit of meditation, so you could just feel that and reflect on it. They can bring up, well, whatever they bring, and you're turning your mind to those thoughts without kind of just exploring what arises in quite a free way. So they could bring a sense of sadness, could bring a sense of openness, might bring a sense of resistance, or no, it's not. Well, it is. You can't really deny that there's something precious about human birth, but you can resist it. So I think I'll on that slightly down note, I'll leave it. But I think let's finish with a kind of just a few minutes of sitting, and I'll read it out again, and then we'll end with a mantra. Turning the mind to the precious human birth. Seeing if that can go deep down. feel the precious human birth would be a great change, it would be a great awakening. Letting in perhaps a sense of the mystery of birth. The mystery of this moment, which is this human moment. This human birth is precious, an opportunity to awaken. But this body is impermanent. Ready or not, one day I shall die. So this life, I must know, is the tiny splash of a raindrop, a thing of beauty that disappears even as it comes into being. The karma I create shapes the course of my life, but however I act, life always has difficulties. No one can control it all. Only the Dharma can free me and others from suffering forever. Therefore I recall my heart's longing for freedom and resolve to make use of every day and night to realize it. some connection to that first verse. We'll be looking at the next verse and going ever deeper into these mind turnings, things that we really take them to heart. Can in and of themselves soften the heart enough to be able to receive this qualities that we call awakening or freedom from our smaller selves. Next week we'll be looking at impermanence and death. So do come along. See you then. Good evening. Thank you. I think for amazing